Without the support of civil rights groups, social and criminal justice organizations, community and faith-based consortiums, political campaigns would be dead in the water. In other words, political activism is essential. One of the strongest and most influential voices in Detroit, and for that matter in the country, is Reverend Wendell Anthony. For the past 3 decades, Reverend Anthony has served as president of the NAACP's Detroit branch, the largest branch in the country. He is a member of the NAACP's National Board of Directors and founder of the Freedom Institute for Economic, Social Justice, and People Empowerment. He also serves as pastor of Detroit's Fellowship Chapel. In a local interview last week following President Biden's departure from the presidential race, Reverend Anthony offered an unsettling assessment of what is at stake in this election, something that you've heard a little bit about during our meetings this week. Quote, "Our nation's destiny is at stake. Our voting rights are at stake. Our freedom is on the line." Here to discuss the power of political advocacy, please welcome Reverend Wendell Anthony.
Thank you, sir. Say good morning to all of you. Good morning to all of you. I was raised by my grandmama. She always said, boy, when you come into the room, first thing you do is open your mouth and speak. And I've been trying to live by that. And so when I do that, I like to get a response back. How many of y'all was raised by your grandmama that had some influence on you? None of y'all? Grandmamas that had influence on you, raise your hand. Okay. Then consider yourself so warned. Let me thank Mr. Johnson for the very kind introduction. Appreciate those kind words, and welcome to the Detroit. And congratulations. I understand that all of you are fellows and you've been successful in achieving this journalistic thrust in your careers. I wanted to be a journalist years ago. I went to Wayne State University and I studied some journalism. And I wanted to be like an anchor person and to write and to get the message out. But somehow I've still been writing and getting other messages out. That kind of deviated. But I got good grades in my courses, but I moved to another area. But journalism is so very important, as you know. And it is a noble profession. And it is one that you really stand in the gap in many cases. And you can make society or you can help break society. Let me share something with you, which I know you're all familiar with. It's part of your creed. I believe that the journalism which succeeds best and best deserves success, fears God, and honors man, is stoutly independent, unmoved by pride of opinion or greed or of power, constructive, tolerant, but never careless, self-controlled, patient, always respectful of its readers, but always unafraid, is quickly indignant at injustice, is unswayed by the appeal of privilege or the clamor of the mob, seeks to give every man, woman, a chance, and as far as law and honest wage and recognition of human brotherhood can make it so, an equal chance, is profoundly patriotic while sincerely promoting international goodwill and cementing world comradeship, is a journalism of humanity and for today's world. That was written by, of course, Walter Williams in 1914. It's on the walls in the National Press Club. It's your creed. I don't know if you stand up and take a pledge to that. How many of you have heard that before? Not everybody have heard that. Well, that's your creed, in case you ain't heard it. That's your creed. That's what journalism is supposed to be about. But as you look around today, it's far from this. Because we got people who are so-called journalists who are doing everything but journalism, who are doing everything but being objective, who are doing everything but articulating and advocating for justice, who are really the bearers of injustice and misinformation and disinformation. Yet you have an opportunity to correct that. Part of being an advocate and a person who believes in social justice is that we often interact with the media. There are people that call me all the time, wanting to get a story, wanting to get, what do I think about this? What's your take? And we build relationships based upon a mutual trust. And when you violate that trust on either side, then it creates a kind of a vacuum. All of you are familiar with the fact that even in this current situation of election, your profession is on the line, because if Project 2025 becomes the law, then it's going to change the whole character, the way we do media here. And I know you're familiar with that. And if you're not, you should be familiar with it, because it's targeting media, it's targeting the Voice of America, it's targeting corporate media, it's targeting those entities that want to have a free press, and it wants to put it under a whole new genre. It wants to put it under National Security Council, put it under the President of the United States. It wants to take the basic elements of freedom away from you and us. And you have a hard job. You're a journalist, you've written a story, you've interviewed Rev. Anthony. They're holding a civil rights march and demonstration over here on the east side. And you were there, you saw it, you were passionate, and you wrote the story about it. And you put your heart and soul and mind into it. And you interviewed 20 people over there. And you got this story and you ready to go. And you wrote it up. Then you bring it back to the office. And then some editor starts chopping it up. We ain't going with that. Then he slaps his heading on it. You got in your mind how you want to label it, but then he slaps his heading on it. Ain't a damn thing you can do about it because he's the editor. But it's your piece. And then when it appears in the paper, Reverend Anthony sees it, what the? And he calls you. Hey, man, my sister, what happened? This ain't what happened at the march. This is not what happened. Why didn't you talk to that person? They're the ones that organized. You talked to somebody that had nothing to do with it. And you put their information in the paper. And it totally mischaracterizes what we did. That's intentionality. Or you use pictures that belittle the individuals that you're talking about. You show them at their worst as opposed to show them at their best. You find the worst, and y'all know that's done. If you don't stay tuned, it's coming. They find the worst when they want to get somebody. And so you have to fight for your stuff. You're going to have to fight for what you believe as journalists and reporters. Don't just accept the okie doke. For those of you who are not familiar with that, that's a community term that means bullshit. Don't go for that. You got to be straight up. It's your stuff. Fight for it. This election is a key situation. I don't care what side of the spectrum you're on, but people need to know the truth. They need to know that people did try to overthrow the government of the United States of America. That was not no cakewalk. They wasn't on no tour of the Capitol. They defecated in the hallways. They urinated in the offices. People were killed. Windows were broken. Flags were burned. They built a scaffold on the lawn. That ain't no picnic. They was trying to kill Mike Pence if they had found him, Nancy Pelosi. They wanted to kill them. And yet we act like, well, they were just on a tour and a few people got out of hand. Bullshit. They wanted to overthrow the government. And there are journalists who support that nonsense. And I just read you part of your creed in terms of what you and we should expect and what you should be about. Detroit NAACP is the largest branch in the country from the National Association. We're the flagship of the organization. We do a lot here that sets the stage for other units and branches around the country. I've been doing this, as my man said, over 3 decades. I had not planned on doing it for this long. And every time I get ready to say, nah, I ain't doing it no more, somebody else said, no, you got to do it. And I'm telling them, this is my last time right here. This is my last time. And because I want to do some other things, but the NAACP since 1909 has been on the case. No matter what you think of it, it's been a voice for everybody, not just for Black people, for women, for other minorities, for everybody. It's been the NAACP, founded by Black and white people, 1909, and we're still doing it. Focus on education, focus on voters, participation, voter rights, focus on civil rights, human rights, women's rights, labor. One of the reasons that the NAACP and the labor unions have such a close marriage is because we have same and similar interests. Workers' rights, civil rights, mobility, diversity, equity, retirement, pensions, a good life for everybody. So those are things that we have in common. That's why we find ourselves married together and have been for so long. Walter Reuther, Martin Luther King Jr., James Del Rio, Reverend C.L. Franklin, all of those individuals were the ones who organized the first I Have a Dream March, which was in Detroit in 1963 in June. The King came here. It was here where he tested out his I Have a Dream theme, which was given to him by a reverend by the name of Reverend Prathia Hole out of Terrell County, Georgia. She was at a prayer meeting and she was praying, having a little talk with Jesus out loud. And she was saying, I have a dream, I have a dream. She didn't elaborate, she just said, I have a dream. Martin Luther King was at that meeting. After the meeting, she drove him to the airport. He said, Reverend, I like that. I have a dream. I'm gonna use that. And use it he did. He painted the picture. Prathia Hall gave him the canvas, the paint, and the brushes. But he painted it. And as a result of that meeting in Georgia, I Have a Dream lives as one of the most profound speeches ever given. And so you never know how it's going to go. That's why it's so important that you do have connections, you do have folk that you can call, but you got to be honest with them. You got to be righteous, because otherwise the sources are not going to be there. They'll be there for a minute until you don't do it in a just way. Not to fix it, but just do it right. Tell the truth. Be fair and balanced. I know we got a network that says we're fair and balanced. Everybody here know they ain't fair and they ain't balanced. And they say that all the time. But one of the things that we do in Detroit and that we're focused on right now is, of course, this election. How many have heard of the expression, take your souls to the polls, or souls to the polls? You're looking at the originator. I started that in 1997. It was really moving for the Clinton-Gore situation. And I was in the pulpit in my church. I said, y'all, we need to take our souls to the polls. And it stuck. And I built upon it. My only regret is that I did not patent it. Because it's used now all over the country. Souls to the polls. Take your souls to the polls. And quite frankly, what it is, next slide, take your soul, I guess I'm supposed to do this. Okay, thank you. It's really a voter mobilization education program. It has 5 points: voter education, voter information, voter registration, voter participation, and voter protection. Voter education, educate folk about what's going on. Voter information is to share with them information, flyers, phone banking, calls, door knocking, rallies. That's the information. Voter registration, registering people. I call this Freedom Summer 2. This is Freedom Summer 2. Freedom Summer 1 was in 1964. This is Freedom Summer 2, 2024, 60 years later. Why do I say that? Because in Freedom Summer 1, you had whites and blacks going to Mississippi to register people to vote. Because at that time, Mississippi only had, for black people, 5.3 to 6% of the black population was registered to vote in Mississippi. That's how horrible it was. They had a questionnaire of 21 questions that they had to fill out based upon 285 sections of the Mississippi Constitution. They could select any of those questions rooted in that. The very people that were giving them these tests didn't know the answers themselves. That's how treacherous it was. And so Freedom Summer, all these people from the North and South went there, registering people to vote. The excitement, the enthusiasm, it was heavy. Cheney, Goodwin, and Schwerner were killed. Civil rights workers, because they were down there to help with that. And churches were being bombed and burned down. And so they were investigating one of the churches that were being bombed, and they bombed, and they were killed. And folk were looking for them, and that created the momentum for the '64 Civil Rights Act, which the president just acknowledged the other day, July 2nd, 1964. Lyndon Baines Johnson signed it into law. '65 Voting Rights Act. Fair housing and all those things emanated from that period. Freedom Summer, excitement, Freedom Summer now. People are registering all over the country. People have never participated in the electoral process are now registering to vote. Almost recently, 200,000 people, new people, young people, people of all races, because of the excitement. And yet, people are still dying. Sonia Mays, Massey, people are still dying. People are still being attacked. Freedom Summer, people are still using bad and dirty language. Freedom Summer 2, and here we are. And so voter participation, because it's good to register, but if you don't vote, it don't mean nothing. And then voter protection. We were here, and you may recall that in downtown Detroit, in the last election, people came down at Cobo Hall at that time, getting ready to intimidate the poll workers. They were standing at the door, on the windows, knocking, bamming on the windows. They want to go in. If you're a poll worker, you're an election worker, and you're trying to do what you do, put the cards in or check your numbers, and you got somebody standing right over you looking all over. I mean, that's intimidation. That was done on purpose. There was no ballots that folk took in wheelbarrows or in suitcases, illegitimate. That was a lie. And folk who was telling it know it was a lie. And no court supported that. And even when they did a commission here, following that, by Republicans who ran the committee, they indicated none of that happened. And people still lie. And so voter participation, voter protection, we have a cadre of lawyers, and we don't mind suing people. And we have done that, who violate the trust, who get in the way, who prevent people from trying to vote, people coming up as you're trying to vote. These workers ain't never seen them in Detroit before, coming from Traverse City. Ain't never been in the neighborhood. Now all of a sudden they're all around voting places and they're asking people, well, are you behind in your child support? Get the hell out of here. I'm saying this is real. Ain't never been here before, but yet they come like that. The purpose is to create intimidation and to make you not want to participate. Well, we protect that. And we have people out all the time doing this process, all over the state, trying to make sure that does not happen. We don't interfere. You have a right to vote for whom you please. But we do want to make sure that your voting is honored and protected. And isn't it something? Absentee ballots ain't for black people. They for all people. They ain't for just Democrats. They for Republicans too, and independents. Drop boxes ain't just for Detroit. They for Grosse Pointe. They for Traverse City. They for Livonia. They for Rochester and Troy. Those are all suburbs. It's for everybody. Everybody should get in the game. We want more people voting, not less. Everybody should want that. But yet, there are people who put laws in to prevent that. Next slide. Take your souls to the polls. I mentioned that this was when we first started in 1997. I did that. This was the yard sign, and you notice on the back of the gym shoe, take your souls, S-O-L-E-S, with a turned around cap. That was when young brothers and sisters were wearing turned around caps, big gym shoes, and I was really trying to motivate them to go to the polls and vote, and we were successful in doing it. We want y'all to take your souls to the polls, but then also S-O-L-E-S for the young people, for folks who did not go to church. Next slide. Take your souls, S-O-U-L-S, to the polls. Those are for people that, you know, like y'all, who go to church, synagogue, temple, who don't need a whole lot of encouragement, but you're going to vote. So take your soul to the poll and vote. That was in a previous election. Next slide. See the praying hands there. See the couple. That's just so nice. Those church people that would come out of church and go and vote. Take your souls to the polls. Next slide. This is what it looks like today. Take your souls to the polls. I voted have you. These are yard signs that we usually give around to people. And door knockers are in the formation of soles of shoes. Next slide. Challenge and poll watcher training, because we teach our people what to do. We just don't have them to come. Next slide. Let's turn on record numbers. These are some of the key dates around events and activities that we have. This is on our line. This is what our phone bankers do. This is what we pass on the community. This is what we're pushing. Next slide. Vote primary election. Our primary is on August the 6th. Informing people that where to go, what to do, using a barcode, they can get all that information. And elsewhere with the polling places, et cetera, they can call our offices. This is throughout the state. Next slide. Let's turn on record numbers again. I voted, this was one of the rallies we had. I voted have you. That's the issue. We're trying to increase the numbers of voting and increase the idea. And one of the ways that we think media can help in that is not beating the people up with so much about how many people ain't voting. Lift up those who are. And one of the things that discouraged me when I was looking at journalists, they always want to talk about the plane that did not make it, rather than the 99 that did. You want to focus on the one plane that crashed, but 99 made it. Yeah, we're sorry, our hearts bleed, we pray, because nobody want to be in that number, but 99 made it. Next slide. Again, what's on the ballot, the issues, preparing the votes, remembering that our hotline number down at the bottom, that 664-2424 number where people can call if they having problems at the polls, they having problems with people trying to intimidate them, they want to talk to one of our lawyers, etc. Next slide. Volunteers, we have volunteers now who are already working, phone banking, etc., young and old and in between. Canvassers, phone bankers, poll monitors, watchers, digital organizer. We are working with our national office because we have, we're looking at areas where people have numbers but they're not voting. And those areas are being targeted relative to stimulating the vote. And quite frankly, what's happening right now is getting a little easier because people are excited. And I'm hearing people say, well, don't get too excited. Don't be so excited. Tone it down. Well, 2 weeks ago, they were saying y'all need to get excited. Now they're saying don't get too excited. But when people are excited, that means they get engaged. If people like something, that means they're going to support that. If people like something, that means they're going to contribute and they're going to tell somebody else about it. I don't want nobody to keep my sermon a secret. If it's good, go out and tell somebody about it. Maybe they'll come to church next Sunday. And so maybe you'll give some more tithes also. If it's good to you, give back. So it's important to have people that are excited and that want to get in the game. And this is a game that everybody got to get into. Next slide. And again, obviously you've heard a lot of talk about black men in this election, whether or not they're going to vote and all that. Yes, they're going to vote. Black women vote in sincere, hard numbers regularly. I think you're going to see, and we're going to see more black men stepping out voting than we've seen in a long time. And because I can feel it, I can see it, I can hear it, rather than appealing to them with gold gym shoes and red bottoms, that ain't gonna get it. And t-shirts with your picture on it behind a prison wall and bars, that ain't gonna get it. That appeals to a level of individuals that you think that because you can relate to that, even though you ain't never been behind bars, that's going to be appealing. Don't play us like that. And so folk are smarter than that, and they'll know better. And we have an interest in that. We have an interest in health care. We have an interest in voting rights. We have an interest in Social Security. I want my Social Security. Worked all this time, and now y'all gonna cut it and privatize? I don't think so. Give me mine. And some of you all gonna want your Social Security too. And you don't want it cut, and you don't want it privatized. Because if it's privatized, it means it goes according to the market. That's what they want to do, put it in the stock market. And if that loses, you lose. No, guarantee. It's my money. It's already mine and yours. In case you didn't know that, it's your money. And so don't mess with the money. Next slide. And this is the last slide. We want folk to be engaged in good trouble. We want people to act like their lives depend upon it. Our vote is, in fact, our voice. Everybody is important in this. And we simply say, take your souls to the polls and vote like your life depended upon it, because quite frankly, it does. Let me stop here because I know he said 20 minutes. I think I went over that time. But if you have any questions or comments, I'll be glad to respond.
I'm not going to argue with you. But go to questions.
Good morning, Reverend.
Good morning.
Cecilia Barria from BBC Mundo, BBC in Spanish.
Okay.
We've seen the expansion of Christian nationalism, especially after 2016, and then there was this reawakened tour after 2020.
Yes.
And we've seen pastors being very vocal and participating in politics. What is your opinion about pastors endorsing candidates inside the church in the name of the Bible?
Well, first of all, let me say this. The NAACP does not endorse candidates. We endorse policies. Different pastors have different ways of doing things. The Christian nationalists traditionally want America to be a Christian nationalist nation over all of the other religions that are here. I don't take that position. I don't think that's the way we should go. I don't think that's what Jesus would have us to be. I think Christian nationalism is more white than right. It's more extreme than in terms of inviting. You note that Donald Trump, and I use his name because that's what it is, he was recently at the turning point, bastion for Christian nationalism. And he said, Christians, just vote for me, just vote for me, just put me in office. And once I get in, you don't have to vote no more. It's going to be all right. You don't have to vote anymore. Just put me in and we're going to fix it. Now, people say, well, he didn't really mean that. It's in Project 2025. 140 of the people that wrote the document worked for him and were his advisors and consultants. Christian nationalism is a part of the thing. And so America was not founded on Christian nationalism, so they say. And we fought against that. It's not my politics that determines my spirituality. It's my spirituality that determines my politics, which means that I can be tolerant. I have Jewish friends, I have Muslim friends, I have Hindu friends, I have some friends who don't know what they are. They're just friends. It's not based upon that. And I think when we start measuring people and judging them by virtue of their faith rather than their work, we're barking up the wrong tree. And I think that that bubble is going to burst, and people recognize that. And as I said, it's more white than it is right. There's nothing patriotic about it. It's detrimental. And hopefully people will see through that.
Reverend, it's great to meet you. My name is Dan Cooney. I'm with the PBS NewsHour.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to ask kind of a broad politics question. We've heard in headlines and through reporting that there's been a shift in engagement with the change at the top of the Democratic ticket. And I'd be curious from your perch, what you've seen from, voters you speak with, your members, people in the NAACP. Just curious what you've seen from people you talk with. As
a result of the shift from Biden to Harris?
Yeah.
Well, I think I tried to say it, excitement. Mm-hmm. I had to tell you, man, this is mind-blowing. I mean, I have to tell you, I thought Obama was mind-blowing. And I have to be honest, I was with, personally, not the organization, just personally, Hillary, because I thought Hillary would have made a great president. But when Obama burst on the scene, and I remember John Lewis, Congressman John Lewis, he was on national TV, and he was crying. He was saying, I love the Clintons. I've been with them all this time, and they're great friends, great people, and I love them. But history is beckoning me. He said, I cannot ignore this historical moment. With tears coming down his face. And if you know John Lewis, he was a very kind and humble man. With all that he went through, still very kind and humble. He spoke for our Freedom Fund dinner here. We've had several presidents to speak for the Freedom Fund dinner here in Detroit. We're the only branch in the country that's had sitting presidents to speak here. Biden just spoke here back in, I think it was June. And so we shifted to Kamala Harris. And the excitement, I've not seen excitement like this since Obama. I think is even more. When you have almost 200,000 people volunteering within maybe a week, raising $200 million in that short period of time, all the people all across the country coming from everywhere. My wife got all kind of paraphernalia. Just in a day. And I'm just saying, so I see it and I hear it. People wanting to volunteer, people calling, asking, what can we do? And then too, yes, she's been the vice president and still is the vice president under Mr. Biden. And the vice president usually don't get a whole lot of action because they're there to serve the president. Say in case something go wrong, then they step in. So how people saying that she's not qualified? I mean, we know what that's about. She's DEI, didn't earn it. We know what that means. We can see through that. Didn't earn it. No, she definitely earned it. And as a prosecutor, as an attorney general, as a senator, as a vice president, traveling to all these countries, she was on the team. She's at the table with Biden. He didn't make them decisions by himself. She was there too. Put her record against the guy she's running against. What does he ever run for? What does he ever champion? Other than bankrupting companies 5 times. And I'm gonna go into all the other details because you already know. A prosecutor versus a persecutor. And so that's the level of excitement that it is. That's why I call it Freedom Summer 2. I'm doing a series of sermons on that. So I'm testing some stuff out on y'all. You just don't know it.
Thank you.
A.G. Gankarski, Florida Politics. Thank you for doing this, and thank you for taking my question.
Yes, sir.
We've got Souls to the Polls in Florida also.
You need it down there.
Yeah, not at your level, but my understanding is that Black women, especially Black women over the age of 45 or so, are the highest propensity voters.
Yeah. How
How do you get the younger voters, the Black males who are younger specifically, the people who aren't guaranteed to turn out every election? And does that make the difference between a successful and a less successful Souls to the Polls effort?
I think it makes it even more incumbent upon taking your souls to the poll. And it's not just Black, it's white young people, it's brown young people, it's young people, period. They don't feel about the system like we do. We used to tell people, your ancestors died for you to have the right to vote. That don't cut it no more. That's not enough. It's like the song, what love got to do with it? Well, I love you, yeah, but what love's got to do? Have you paid my bills? I mean, that was good last night, but I'm talking about this morning. So it's like, it's a challenge, my brother. It really is a challenge. But I think one of the things that we got going for us now is the candidate. Because she has stimulated so many young people who are now voting, who now want to get in the game. And the candidate is important. And I recognize that President Biden, 81 years of age, and when he stepped, you could feel it. When he came off the plane, you could see it and you could hear it in some of his comments. And sometimes, and the debate did not help. We know it was a terrible debate. But I would, personally, not NAACP, I would rather have Joe Biden laying down on a bed in a nursing home than Trump standing up in the White House. That's just how bad it is. That's just how critical this thing is. And so young people understanding that they have a stake in this is hitting them right here in the eye. Your HBCU money, your loans, student loans, and some of y'all may have loans. I know y'all ain't never had no loan in your life. You don't owe nobody nothing. But somebody in your family might have student debt. That's important to them. Social Security is important to them. Voting rights, your ability to vote is on the line. The Department of Justice is on the line. They want to eliminate the Department of Education. And that means breakfast programs. That means certain programs for disabled students. That means money that will come. And they want to, in Project 2025, public schools who receive federal funds will have to register for the military, those students. They want to institute another draft. Who do you think would be unduly impacted by that? Black and brown people. Remember Vietnam? We were there in numbers. And so it's a real situation. They got some real stuff on their hands. It's not just for grown folks, it's for all folks, for the yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So they have a stake in this, and we have to somehow convince them of that. But I am more encouraged today than I was 2 weeks ago because of what I see, what I hear, and what I feel.
Hi, Maria Mendez from the
Hello.
Texas Tribune. Thank you for your. Okay. Thank you for your insights. I was curious if you could talk a little bit more about the difference between in the 5-step model, voter information and voter education, like what that looks like, and then 2, granted that, or given that y'all do already have a lot of great resources on how to go out and vote, I'm curious what you think journalists can provide in terms of helping educate voters. Like, where can we help you?
Well, thanks. I think, I don't know if you can put that slide back up there with the voter on the campaign with the 5 steps, if you can. But a part of that is what you're doing here. Now, hopefully you'll take the information that you received during this conference and implement some of that. I've shared some things with you. You can write about what's going on in local communities. You can make sure you're connecting to the people that are actually on the ground that are doing it. And you can fight for your stories when you know they're right. And sometimes it's going to be a fight because your editors ain't going to want to go that way. But you've been in the field and you know what the people are saying. Voter education. Those are the 5 steps to the Take Your Souls to the Polls campaign. Voter education, informing the people, educating them about what's the issue. Like I've been talking about Project 2025. It's boring. It's 900 pages. People ain't going to read it. But it's a blueprint for disaster. But you better know it. Summarize it. You can Google it. Some of y'all know it. It's a disaster. You got to educate them. You got to give them the proper information. Where to go, who to see, what to do, what time, what days, where the locations are, where the drop boxes are, the time of it. You almost have to spoon feed some people. And it's laborious, but it's necessary. Then you have to do voter registration. At every instance, every time you participate in something, you're doing voter registration. I keep some voter registration cards in my car because I never know who I'm going to run into. Are you registered to vote? Yes, I am. No, I'm not here. Registered. That's very important. But see, it's not enough to register. We got a lot of people that are registered. There were 500,000 people that are registered, black folk registered in Detroit, Plain County. But they ain't voting, all of them. So you can be registered, but you got to vote. If you don't vote, your registration doesn't mean anything. So we emphasize that. Then voter participation, getting them to the polls. And now, they're passing laws where you can't take people to the polls, particularly down in Florida, Texas, Georgia. One of the things about Michigan is we have one of the most progressive states right now when it comes to voting. Access to voting, early voting, 9 days early voting, drop boxes have increased. Everybody gets an absentee ballot all over the state. And so that has happened. 17-year-olds can register to vote, getting them ready. And so that's not done in a whole lot of other states. And then some people don't even want you to give folk water while they stand in line. Y'all heard about that. And then they don't want churches to take people to the polls. And some people want to interfere with taking souls to the polls on Sunday. Churches organizing, well, this Sunday we're going to go to the polls and vote. They don't want to do that. And so, but we have to do that. We got to fight for those. Voter participation is essential. And we push early voting. Early voting. The other folk did not want to push that. Now they see, well, we need to push early voting. They changed that. And then voter protection. You got to protect it once it happens. Can't let people intimidate the voters or the poll workers, the election workers, because that's important. Hope that responds to your question.
Reverend, thanks for being here. Stu Whitney with South Dakota News Watch. We've talked a lot about the intersection and sometimes conflicts between state voting laws and federal voting laws. Seen some of that. You referenced Georgia and obviously other states. How important is it to, when we're talking about in-person voting, to have people on site, as you noted you do, but lawyers on site to intercede at the flashpoint of these things occurring, whether it be voter ID, affidavits, poll hours, access, rather than, obviously the litigation can occur after, but it's good to confront these things on site, isn't it?
It's critical. And we do have people on site. As I said, we have a cadre of lawyers, and you have to be on site. And that's why we have that number there, 664-2424. And then we have people going out. We have lawyers going out. We have poll watchers, people who are looking. They like troubleshooters. When they encounter those kind of situations, they call in. And our lawyers, if not there, will be on the scene. We also have alerted the courts that, in case something happens, we will be coming to the courts for legal redress on these situations. But it's vitally important because things happen just like that. And polls change. And sometimes the attitude of the workers, the people who are standing around the doorways, can inflict itself upon the people that want to come in and access the vote. So yeah, it's critical. And we have people at the voting booths, precincts, and also back at the home office. You got to have both of them. It's not either or, it's both and.
Reverend Malachi Barrett from Bruce Detroit. Good to see you. I wanted to hear your perspective on a narrative that's come up a lot in recent election cycles, and I may have seen some evidence for it. Basically, the idea that young black men are becoming Trump supporters or are more open to conservative ideas. And I understand the numbers on that, maybe not as influential as other factors in this race, but I've met some folks, some young men who espouse that Trump's a great guy, that they seem to be aligned, and there's a number of rappers in the city that are supporting Trump as well. And so I guess I'm wondering, do you feel that there's too much attention on that, not enough, and what kind of impact do you think that's going to make on this race?
I'm glad you raised the question. I think it's too much attention on it. Black men are not going to vote for Trump in numbers. They just ain't going to do that. And I've heard it. I've heard him talking about, we got a great increase. The black men are going to vote for. That's why he's using the gold gym shoes. And I'm thinking, and see, that's insulting. That you think you can get me by sending me some gold gym shoes, red bottom, and a T-shirt with your picture on it behind prison walls. But it should be insulting to Christian folks about him getting the Bible and putting the Constitution and Declaration of Independence in it and they get your Trump Bible right here as he holds it upside down, and think that's going to get you. That should be insulting to all people who are people of faith. He don't go to church. He don't worship God, because he said, I have done nothing in my life that I think I should have to ask God to forgive me for. He said that. I didn't say it. He said that. And so I don't think, my brother, that you're going to see a whole lot of young black men voting for him. Now you're going to see some. There's always some. Tim Scott, Lord have mercy. So you're going to always have some. But I think it's overblown. I don't think it's going to be that number. And we're fighting that. Trump puts on this macho thing. If it's so macho, why won't you debate Kamala Harris? If she's so bad, so incompetent, why won't you debate her? You readily debated Joe Biden, but now you're backing out of debating this black woman. What's up with that? Where's your macho-linity in that situation? So no, I hear it, but say it ain't so.
Hi, Reverend.
Hello.
Good morning. I'm Amy Sherman with PolitiFact. We are tracking about 100 of Biden's 2020 campaign promises.
Yes.
One of his promises was to support the study of reparations. I have not seen any evidence he's done it. I wondered if you hear voters talking about that. And then two, is there anything the Biden administration could do to protect voting rights this fall that it isn't doing yet or isn't doing enough of?
No, I haven't heard anything about the reparations piece. It's not a major topic of discussion in the community. We do have a reparations task force here in Detroit that's looking at that, as they have in other cities, but it's not one of the top 5 or top 10 issues that we are dealing with. Does not mean that it's not important. It is important, but it's not on that list of priorities. I think that, first of all, we need to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. We need to do that. Biden has said he would do it. He would have done it, but he has an intransigent Congress and Senate. Couldn't get the votes, and they didn't support that, but they committed to it. I think Kamala Harris is committed to that. They don't want to do that. If you look at Project 2025, they ain't interested in no voting rights. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, we still have not passed that. And yet we saw what happened with Sonia Massey just recently. And there's going to be others. There's going to be others. That police officer that killed her should not have been on the force. He already had 6 cases against him. And they put him back on the force for him to do it. So there should be tracking for police officers. All that's a part of these acts. And it's designed to help people, not to punish police, but it's a protection for police officers as well. And so I think that in line with your question, yeah, there's some things that he can do, they're doing. They have indicated, and one of the advantages that we have now, as opposed to when Donald Trump was in office, the Biden administration is in office. And Trump is already telling us now he's going to protest the election. It's going to be rigged if he doesn't win. He's already set us up for that. If he doesn't win, it's fixed. And so we got to challenge. That's the same thing he was saying that led to January the 6th. And so I think the advantage is it ain't gonna be that easy this time. And so they are smart enough to know there are things that they gotta put in place, and they have. They have lawyers, they have secretaries of state who have put certain things in position. I know we have done that here in Michigan, where what you saw in the last election is not gonna be what you see in this election. So it's gonna be different.
Or if anybody has.
Thank you. Joey Capoletti with the Associated Press. I'm based in Lansing. I'm wondering, because of Detroit's, political significance and, high population of black voters, you oftentimes see national reporters coming here and reporting, in the community. And I'm wondering what, your perspective is maybe about how those national reporters can do a better job of covering Detroit, not just parachuting in, talking to a few people. Do you have any, thoughts maybe on how to, I guess, better cover Detroit as a journalist?
Well, I think Detroit is a big little place. And if you've never been to Detroit, the image you have of Detroit is that it's an urban community that has challenges, struggling, housing, dilapidated and all that. That ain't Detroit. That's a part of every community in America, in urban communities, urban areas. One of the things I noticed, because I did a campaign against y'all years ago. It was called Detroit is Better Than That. We wore buttons, we demonstrated, we marched against the Detroit news and the media. Why? Because they were painting Detroit with this negative brush, Devil's Night. Some of you may recall Devil's Night associated with Detroit. Well, we don't get a devil no night. He don't need no night. He got too many days and night. And we changed it to Angel's Night. But one of the things you can do is show all Detroit. My neighborhood is never in the media. I live in the heart of Detroit, North Rosedale Park, Palmer Woods, Indian Village, Russell Woods. Those neighborhoods, you never seen them. Beautiful homes, lovely homes, big houses, immaculate lawns, people live, black people. But you don't see that. There's an image that they show of Detroit. And that's why I say the truth should make you free. As journalists, you have a responsibility to show the truth. Don't show a part. Like you do a story in my neighborhood, you want to show it, and then you take it back. And that looks too good. We ain't going to show that people. Let's show this picture. No, that's not being truthful. You got to fight for your stuff. And you're going to find that out sooner or later. Because there's going to be something that you're going to want to do or that you've done, and you're going to have to fight like heaven to get it the way you want it and the way you know it should be. So image is important. That's why we have such a problem. That's why Biden has such a problem with Gaza. It's the images. And a lot of us, young people today, they know not Israel. There's a whole new generation of young people that know not Joseph. They don't know the history. They don't know the relationship. What they see is death and dying and bombing. Babies dead, grandmamas and aunties, daddies, destruction. I know it was bad October 7th. I know it. Don't support that. Don't support Hamas. They did a terrible thing. My grandmama said 2 wrongs don't make no right. What we see in Gaza with them people, it's not right. And the young people are not wrong for calling that out. Even Netanyahu's own people don't want him to be the premier. There are hundreds of thousands of Jews in the streets protesting him. He would have been gone prior to October the 7th if that had not went down. So I can support Israel, and I've been to Israel twice. Beautiful country. I like Israel. I can support Israel without supporting Netanyahu. That don't make me anti-Semitic. And so I'm simply saying, and the Jewish community and black community have a tight relationship going back to NAACP, 1909. Schwerner, Goodman, Cheney, I mentioned to you that they were killed in 1964. 2 of those were Jews. Jews were beaten in that struggle. Jews came down on buses. to work with the black folk in that communities. We still work together. But that don't mean I gotta like what I see going down in Gaza. See, it's hard to beat up Putin and what he's doing in Ukraine and not say nothing about what's going on in Gaza. It's about balance. And Putin is a dog. And what he's doing there is wrong. What's happening in Gaza is wrong. And it needs to stop. And that's why a lot of young people are turned off, because they can't get past that. The images that they see on a day-to-day basis. Hopefully be over sooner rather than later. Thank you, sir.
Before Reverend Anthony's remarks, we talked about the program a little bit, and he cut me off and he said, I've done this once or twice before. So I think he's proved that and more today, and we thank him so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.